Hi, my name is Bob Carroll. I'm the Executive Vice President and Permanent Solutions Labor Consultants and your host for today's episode of Employee Relations Words of Wisdom. And I am joined today by Dr. Teddie Malangwasira. Teddie, how are you doing today? Or you go by Dr. Teddie, correct?
Yes, Dr. Teddie. Thank you so much, Bob. Yes, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Oh, fantastic. I think I'm going to beat the rain and we'll get this thing out of the way. I am joining you from a park. This has become my new office. When the kids are home and rambunctious during the COVID virus.
Yes, I understand. Totally understand. Yes.
So I wanted to get Dr. Teddie to talk about what's going on in our country. Dr. Teddie is an established author. He's written three books and is a specialist in diversity and leadership and race, as you can see behind him. And I wanted to have a real hard-nosed conversation of what we need to look for in the workplace and what we can do in the workplace to make it better for the employee experience and to be better employers in the first place. With that said, Dr. Teddie, I see leadership is not about race in the background. Can you tell me what that means?
Yes, thank you so much, Bob. So leadership is not about race. It's a book that was written in 2017. This one talks about race in two dimensions. One, race as a competition, and two, race as in people's background, like African American, could be Caucasian, could be somebody from Japan, and things like that. So it has two dimensions in it. And you may question why leadership is not about race in relation to everything else that's going on. In light of the situation that just happened with the police situation and everything else that's going on, everybody looks up to leadership. And the first question is, what is our leadership doing? Who is our leader? But again, when I look at it and in looking at what I've written about leadership is not about race, it is not about black or white, or it's not about a competition. However, leadership is about influencing others. It doesn't matter the background, it doesn't matter the color of your skin, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, but can you influence others in a positive way? That's what leadership is all about. And in this book, Leadership is not about race, I dive into how leaders and followers inspire and influence each other. In other words, the leaders that are here today have been followers before. Before they became leaders, they know exactly what the followers have done in the past. Therefore, in light of everything else that's going on in today's America, we are talking about racism. We're talking about people not liking one another because of their skin color. That's not leadership and that's not followership, because both leadership and followership is about influencing one another, inspiring each other in order to achieve the bigger goal in future.
And I agree with you 100%. In fact, before we started recording, I was telling Dr. Teddie that I started a journey on discovering my own implicit bias, my own biases that I didn't even know that I was aware of. And when I speak to people now, I will admit that I've done some things that have been unconsciously racist. And I'm not proud of the fact. I thought I was doing the right thing, but it was until I discovered unconscious bias, until I discovered the way I was raised as a child, or my parents were raised as they were children, that this was stuff that was instilled in me from the day I was born until the day I actually made a pretty significant discovery about myself. And as I was telling Dr. Teddie, it wasn't a black and white thing at the time. It was a group of Yemeni employees that were unionizing a company. And, you know, I got to admit, they made me nervous when I walked into the room. They made me uncomfortable. But what I found was this union activity was happening during Ramadan, and they actually invited me in and explaining their culture, explaining what they're all about. And it fascinated me that I was wrong. For all these years, I was completely wrong. And it made me realize I had a lot of work to do within myself. And I think that's something that everybody, I don't care if you're white, black, yellow, it doesn't matter what color you are, we all have those biases in us. And we as a nation, we as business leaders, we as employers, we have got to realize that and take that head on. Would you agree?
Yes, I agree 100%, Bob. Now, when you talk about unconscious biases, yes, you are correct in that we don't know that we are biased towards something until maybe someone has pointed that one out. For example, you talk about having a discussion with the family, with the children and stuff like that. It is true that most of our children or most of our behavior that we have is inherited from maybe from fathers, uncles, aunts, and so on and so forth. And we may be doing things or saying things that in actual fact are not supposed to be said because of we don't know. It has always been that way. Two things that I can point out on that one. The first one is when you don't know that you have that biases, sometimes you say certain things, but you have to think about the people that are receiving the message from you. That becomes a crucial point because you can say, okay, I'm doing it, it's okay, it's all right. But then the person receiving it sees it as, no, this is not right, in this particular case with racism, or he's racist and he's doing certain things. The second point is also you have to understand the people that you are with. Sometimes we make jokes just because everybody in the past, my friends have made the joke, but it is not right. Unconscious bias, as we say, this is an implicit bias. Sometimes it is you are saying certain things regarding certain group of people. In the workforce, for example, we have aging workforce. Unconscious bias, you may say, oh, well, can you do these things? It's Bob and Dr. Teddie. Can you guys, oh, you know what? We can't do it. You can't do it with it. Let me give you another partner. Why? Bob is kind of odd. He's an older person. Well, what did you just say there? That's where unconscious bias kicks in because you were saying certain things about somebody's age, as an example. Or you may say, well, I want you to do this, this, and that. Oh, okay, but I don't like Dr. Teddie. I don't want Dr. Teddie to do these things because, okay, he's of African descent. Nothing wrong with saying it that way, but the way you said it, it may be affecting somebody else who is receiving the information. So it might as well also be a work that involves two people, one being female, another one being male, and you say, well, I want you to go pick that garbage up and ask so-so to help you out. Well, I've got an employee here who can help me out. Well, you have to remember she's female. It's things like those which are okay in other settings to say, but yet the unconscious bias kicks in because the other person is going to be offended. It's not the right thing to do. For you as the one speaking it, you don't know it because everybody talks it like that, but it's not right. So what I normally say to folks in the workforce is, first of all, examine yourself. Whatever you say, would you be okay if somebody else say the same thing to you or to other people? Because when you talk about unconscious bias, and in this particular case with the race, it becomes a problem in the workforce because number one, our leaders don't know how to speak politely about race. Two, they avoid that topic because they don't want to say, oh, because he's black, I'm not going to say something to him, I'm going to offend him, which is wrong. In actual fact, we need to embrace that information. We need to embrace the differences. We need to embrace the racial differences because for me to understand what that individual is going through, I need to have a conversation and have a better understanding of him on why does he do things a certain way, why do I act differently? And those differences, when you talk about race, brings us all together, and that's how we move forward as in America or anywhere else in society.
I can't agree with you any more. You're 100% spot on. I think, in fact, I was on a call with our HR roundtable with our Chamber of Commerce here, and I made a statement that people should not be afraid to talk about it But if they are afraid to talk about it and they don't mean it from the heart, they shouldn't talk about it, because people are going to see right through that. And what was amazing about that is, as I was recording that, another member of the chamber, who is also an expert in unconscious bias, had to be recording almost word for word what I said, because she released a video no more than 10 minutes after our phone call was over. Yeah. So I know there's some merit to that. And I see that in Starbucks, what they did with the Black Lives Matter movement, and they will not let their employees wear anything supporting that movement. Why? Because it's too political for them. Is that right or wrong?
No, it is wrong, because you cannot politicize the race. Once we get into the race and you politicize the race, it becomes an issue of, it's this group of people, but politically, we have to be politically correct. That's not, in my case, that's not acceptable. Because what we have to remember is that when you talk about leadership, political and anything else, every society is looking for an excellent leader, somebody who can lead them from where they are today to the next level. So if you say, I'm going to avoid the topic, that is another issue right there, because you cannot avoid these topics. You have to remember there's certain characteristics that a leader needs to have in order to be an excellent leader, whether with race or without race. Is that one of it, the leader must be an inspiring leader. Somebody else needs to be able to say, okay, I want to be like him. I want to do certain things just like him. And also a leader has to be honest. If you're honest about anything else, there's no way to avoid the topic, because if you're honest about it, let's talk about it and have dialogue. But also people are looking for somebody who is trustworthy. Can I trust this individual? Somebody who is competent and somebody who is caring, and also somebody who can enable others. So for example, Bob and Ted here, we're having a discussion. If we are leaders, we cannot avoid the topic of race. I cannot say, I can't talk about this information because, Bob is Caucasian, or to that effect. I am African, to that effect. We can't do that. We need to talk to one another. We can't avoid the topic, because that's where we come to a common understanding of what are we supposed to be doing in this particular case. So to answer your question, that is, in my books, that is not right. It leads me, that's one thing that has led me to write my third book, which is Leading in a Diverse Environment. Because there's a lot of things that we can talk about and a lot of things that people discuss. But when you talk about leading in a diverse environment, it does not only require race. It requires a lot of things that involves in a diverse environment. And also it could be the height. And again, unconscious biases comes in. Somebody is short, how do we talk to them? It might as well be the way somebody dresses. It might be the way somebody talks. It might be the way somebody does a few things. All those things, it's not only about race. Race, yes, it is an element, but it's all these things that we need to have in order to lead others effectively. At the same time, most people only said, well, it's about leadership. They're trying. No, even the followers also cannot avoid these topics, because we need to come together, come to our senses, and talk to each other as to why is the issue of race a serious problem, especially today in America.
That's spot on. And I'll tell you this, when I do my unconscious bias training, I get asked all the time, is it just the supervisors? No, we want the employees involved as well. Correct. We want everyone open in this discussion. And what I find is people are so afraid to talk about race, to talk about the
LGBTQ.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Sun just got right in my eye.
No, I understand.
To talk about these things. They're so afraid that they're going to get in trouble by saying the wrong thing. Well, guess what? You probably will when you start. I know I did when I started my journey. I said the wrong things. It took practice. It took self-control. And the number one thing, Teddy, that worked for me wasn't this. It was these.
Correct.
It was listening.
Correct. And in that case, I agree with you, because as leaders or as somebody else who is out there in this society, one of the things that we need to have is to listen. And every book that has been written out there about race, about diversity, about leadership, one of the fundamental characteristics is, can I listen? Is my leader listening to me? The leader needs to be able to listen, because once you listen it, you think about it, and you take some action after listening to the discussion. So it is always important that we listen to what somebody is trying to say to us or to everybody, then take some action after you have listened. Because one thing, Bob, that most people don't want to talk about is, in a work situation, if it's a boss and a subordinate, somebody is interrupting. In most cases, it's always the boss. You know, an employee is trying to say something, the boss is interrupting. The follower, who is the subordinate, is going to keep quiet, because the boss knows everything that I have to say. So if you listen to somebody else, regardless of race, they will open up and you can have good dialogue. You talk about the LGBT community. It's one of those things where unconscious bias kicks in. I remember I was speaking in one of the conferences, and one of the person who asked me is like, Dr. Teddie, how are you doing? I said, I'm doing good. Okay, that's fine. But then he said, well, you have an accent. I said, yes, I do have an accent. You know, where are you from? That conversation, because I didn't know the person, can be uncomfortable. The next question they asked me is, well, where is your wife? I said, oh, he's at home. I said, is she busy working at home with children and stuff like that? Mind you, they didn't know who I am. They didn't know who my wife is. Yes, of course, I am married to my wife. We have 4 kids, 4 daughters, which I love them. But in light of this discussion, that could be offensive to somebody who might have been on the gay relationship, because it's the same discussion. Saying, how are you doing? How is your wife? Is she at home? Is she with the children? How do they know I am the female in this relationship? So we have to know somebody. The first thing that I always point out to people is, whether we're talking about race, whether we're talking about diversity in general, know the audience, know the people that you are discussing with, because certain things that you may say will offend them, consciously or unconsciously. So that's one thing that I've always strived to people, say, know the audience, know the people. Once you know the people, there's nothing wrong talking about racial issues.
Yeah, and I said I started a journey not too long ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and I do consider myself very knowledgeable in a field. And I understand unconscious bias, but what I do find is I'm learning more and more every single day. You've written books on the subject of race. You've written books. You clearly understand it. Do you find you're learning more and more every day as well?
Yes, I'm learning more and more every day, and learning in this area does not end. I'll tell you something, Bob, which most people don't realize. My wife is Caucasian, and there's certain things that we, from African Americans, African descent, sometimes we say in the brotherhood community, which is not right. The more I'm with my wife, the more I realize that not what I say every day is always right. So I'm learning every single day, not at home, but also when I go to work, because there's different people from different areas. And I see, the more I speak to them, the more I talk to them, there's lessons, things that I didn't think about, things that I've said, things that I've done, which I'm like, wow, I wish I would have known this many times ago. So yes, I'm continuing to learn, and I'm not done yet. I'll learn until the last breath.
I agree, and I'm on the same boat. We are definitely going to continue learning, and I know that I got years ahead of me to learn. Dr. Teddie, I just found out what Juneteenth was yesterday.
You just find out what?
What Juneteenth was yesterday.
What was it?
See, there we go.
See?
It's a African American holiday
Okay.
that signifies the freeing of the slaves.
See, when you said in that case, now we're having a conversation, that's what it should be. Because when you mention, hey, I know what it means, I have my own bias. And, okay, is it this or is it that?
Yeah,
So
I didn't know.
Yeah, but we need to ask, and we are continuing to learn every single day. So this is a good stuff.
Yeah, and it's in 47 of the 50 states that it's recognized.
Correct.
And Michigan's one of them, where I'm at.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
So yeah, like I said, we're going to continue learning, and that's how you make progress.
Correct.
Continue to learn. Okay, I want to give you the opportunity before we go to talk about your books, real quick, and talk about where people that are watching this can find them.
Sure, of course, yeah. So the books can be found on my website, www.malangwasira.com. You can also find them on Amazon. They are available in both the hardcover. This is an example of a hardcover book. Here's another one. You can also find them on the ebook. So they're available in both hardcover and ebook. These are good resources to have. I would encourage people to look through it. If you are talking about race, here is a book that you can use. Leadership is not about race. How leaders and followers inspire and influence one another. But also, this was third book that is an award-winning book. I was given the Presidential Award in 2019. This one is Leading in a Diverse Environment, Steps to Effective Growth, Inclusion, and Development in Your Organization. These are good resources that you need to have when you're talking about race or anything else. Both of those books are available online on my website as well as on Amazon. You'll be able to find them.
I might have to order them.
By any means.
And do me a favor, when we're done, send me your website again so that I can put it in the description in the video.
I will definitely do that shortly after this.
Okay. Dr. Teddie, I want to thank you. It's been amazing. I think we could probably talk for hours.
Right.
It's been a real honor to talk to you. I hopefully can have you on again, and as we move forward with change.
Right.
I would love to partner with you and talk more as we move forward.
Thank you so much, Bob. It has been a pleasure, and I appreciate you having me on your show. And definitely, I'm available anytime. I'll be available, and we can partner moving forward.
Okay, Dr. Teddie, thanks again, and I look forward to seeing all of you next time on Employee Relations Words of Wisdom.
Thank you very much, Bob.